One of the aspects that makes WordPress so flexible and such a popular platform to work on is that it allows for multiple users. So your blog is always going to have at least one user, and that's you, because it's your blog. And you, by default, have the role of administrator. So in other words, you have carte blanche on your blog. You can do whatever you want with your blog. You can customize it, you can write posts, you can moderate those comments and create pages and all kinds of stuff, right? But what's extremely cool here is you can add in other users. So maybe you're in a situation where you're running the blog for your company and you want to allow perhaps someone from the marketing department to also write posts, and you want someone else from the sales department to be able to write posts, but you want to limit them. You don't want them to be able to have as much freedom in terms of customization that you have as the blog administrator. So you can actually set up different profiles for these users, and you can actually control exactly what they do on your blog, which is extremely cool. So let's get started here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head down to the left-hand side, down to Users. Go ahead and pop open Users, and go ahead and click on Authors and Users. And of course, this will give you a list of all of the users that you have set up on your blog right now. And you can have an unlimited number of users, by the way, which is very cool. So what we have here is just myself at this point, or yourself. And there's the avatar that we have associated to that particular account. There's the person's name, email address, and then their role. And as you'll see in just a moment, we can assign different roles or different levels of privilege, if you will, on our blog. And then finally, way over on the right-hand side, the number of posts that this particular user has created. And what you'll see as we really get going with this is running across the top, we can always filter our views. So I could say, all right, show me the 5 administrators that I have for this blog, or show me the 2 authors that I have for this blog, and so on. So as we add on more users, we can start to filter our view using these links that'll show up across the top here. So let's go ahead and add in a new user. So what I'll do here is underneath users, I'm going to head down to add new. Right away, it's asking me for a username or a screen name here. So I'm going to type in Bob Smith and his first name and his last name and his email address, something like this. And if I want to, I can add in his website URL if he has a website. And then I also have to include a password, and this is required twice. And I'm just going to stick in a very weak password. What I like about this, though, is we have this sort of this strength indicator here. I'm just throwing in a very weak password just because this is an example, but usually you want something very strong. And they're suggesting here to use symbols and lowercase letters and numbers and things like that to strengthen it up there a little bit. Send password. Send this password to our new user via email. Probably a good idea in the real world so that they have a record of it. But that's a fictitious email address, I think. Sorry, Bob. But what I'll do is I'll uncheck that because I don't want to send that. This is just a quick example here, of course. And then here's what I really wanted to show you here, the role. So what can Bob do on my blog? And we have a bunch of different roles here. We have subscriber, administrator, editor, author, and contributor. So what I'll do here is I'll rhyme through each of these in a brief capacity anyway, and you can kind of get a feel for what each of these roles can actually perform on your blog. So the first role that we have is the role of subscriber. And what a subscriber can do is they can read comments, they can comment themselves, and they can possibly receive your blog's newsletter. That's kind of it. So it's a sort of a base user role, if you will. Then we have administrator, and don't forget that you have an administrator role on your account for your blog. As the owner of the blog, you of course are the blog administrator. With an administrator account, that means that the person can change any aspect of the blog, carte blanche. So they can change the theme, the look and feel of the blog, they can customize things, they can add in widgets and plugins, they can create, edit, and delete pages and posts, and they can moderate comments and create other user accounts and things like this. Next up, we have an editor. An editor can upload files, they can write posts, they can moderate comments and manage categories and links as well. They can edit pages and they can edit other authors' posts, and they can also read and edit private posts as well. Okay, next we have an author. An author can upload files, they can write posts, they can delete their own posts, and unlike a contributor, which we'll talk about in just a second, the posts that an author creates don't need to be approved by an administrator. Okay, last but not least, our contributor. A contributor can upload files and they can write posts, but when they write a post, it's actually saved as a draft, which then must be approved by an administrator. So using the contributor role is really good if you want to moderate new authors on your blog. So I think that's what I'll do here. I'm going to set Bob up as a contributor, and then down at the very bottom here, I'll click on Add User. That brings me into the user screen for Bob, and I'm going to go back to authors and users here on the left-hand side. And there's our list of users. So there's myself, and there's Bob, which I just created a second ago. So very cool that you can add in additional users. And again, you can add in an unlimited number of users. A great way to allow contributors to add their say, add their content to your blog, but of course you also have some control in terms of what those people can do on your blog.